You ever get fired so politely, so surgically, that no one in the room even realizes you're being buried alive? My name is Alex Mercer. I'm 44 years old. For the past 15 years, I was the chief strategy officer and co-founder of a company called Vector and Rise, a brand consultancy that started in the back of a shared WeWork and grew into a multi-million-dollar firm with clients from Tokyo to Toronto. Or at least it was. The meeting was called for 9 a.m. sharp in the big glass room. The lighthouse, they used to call it, because it sat at the corner of the building and caught the morning sun like a cathedral. I helped pick out the damn chairs. I was already seated when Caleb walked in, flanked by two people I didn't recognize. Fresh faces, young. One had a ring light clipped to her phone. The other had the dead-eyed look of a PR handler in crisis mode. Caleb smiled that new CEO smile, the kind that looks better on camera than in real life. He was wearing white sneakers with his suit again, something he started doing right around the time he stopped asking for my input. He took the head of the table like he'd earned it, like he hadn't once come to me asking how to explain ROI to a client, without sounding like he was reading from a textbook. "Alex," he began, too warm. "First off, I just want to say thank you. You built this place. You gave it soul. But as we're pivoting into this next chapter, into a space that lives and breathes in digital fluency, we need leadership that reflects the evolution of where brand identity lives now." I didn't say anything. He gestured to the girl next to him. "This is Riley Kai. She's a culture strategist and multi-platform creator. You may recognize her from the LexiLabs campaign. She'll be taking the lead on brand evolution moving forward." She beamed. Couldn't have been more than 23. Straight out of grad school, probably with a minor in vibes. I'd seen her pitch deck floating around last week. Slides full of gradient blobs and phrases like soul-driven synergy and hyper-authentic virality. It had all the nutritional value of cotton candy. "Of course," Caleb continued, "this isn't about replacing anyone. It's about reimagining roles. You've always said strategy is about timing, and we believe now's the time to let new voices rise." Translation. I was done. They were just putting a ring light on my corpse to keep it pretty. I glanced around the table. A few of the older team members couldn't meet my eyes. Jenna, from legal, kept fiddling with her pen. Tom, who I hired out of undergrad, looked like he was waiting for me to flip the table or scream. I didn't. Instead, I nodded. Once. "Got it." Caleb blinked. "That's all you want to say?" "What else is there?" He opened his mouth, but I was already standing. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I slipped my notebook into my bag. Leather-bound, no logo. A gift from a client in Munich. I left the pen on the table. Let them keep something. I turned to Riley. "Good luck," I said, not kindly, not unkindly. Just clearly. "You'll need it." She blinked like she'd been caught in a flash photo. As I walked out, I heard Caleb say something about grace under pressure to the others, like he was narrating a documentary no one asked for. I didn't look back. Back at my office, my former office, I packed quietly, framed photos, my books, a few client thank you notes I actually cared about. There was a letter opener shaped like a shark. That stayed. Let someone else cut through lies with it now. I left the awards, the shelves, the custom desk lamp Jenna gave me after we landed the Hyperion contract. Let them inherit the weight. The walk to the lobby felt longer than usual. My reflection followed me down the marble hallway, slightly warped in the polished glass. I didn't hate him. Not anymore. He looked tired, but still upright, still capable of rising again. Security didn't even flinch when I dropped my badge into the tray. No ceremony, no drama. Just a soft clack and a door opening. 15 years, reduced to one sound. Outside, the morning was bright, brutally so. I could hear traffic, distant music, the buzz of a drone overhead filming God knows what. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just stood there for a minute, holding the box, letting the sun warm my face like a goodbye I never got. Someone from HR emailed me 2 hours later with transition documentation. I didn't open it. Instead, I sat in my apartment surrounded by cardboard and silence, and let the rage pass through like a storm. When it was gone, something colder settled in its place. Not grief, not fear, something useful, something that waits. The first 3 days were bad, worse than I'd admit to anyone. I didn't shave, I barely ate. I sat in my apartment in the same pair of sweats, watching Riley's face fill my phone screen over and over again. She was everywhere. Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube Shorts. Each video like a pixelated middle finger. "Hi fam," she chirped in one. "We're rethinking brand legacy. Less history, more herstory. Okay, ye?" I watched it 12 times, not because I was obsessed, because I couldn't believe the board had bought this. 15 years building something real, and they handed it to a personality with neon eyeliner and a digital intuition. Whatever that meant. The company's main account, my company, still hard not to say that, had been scrubbed clean of anything I'd written. Our old brand manifesto was gone. In its place, a flashy reel with soundtracked clips of Riley dancing in the elevator and pointing at buzzwords like authenticity, disruption, and next-gen truth. It felt like watching someone burn your house down and live stream it with confetti. I nearly replied, nearly commented, nearly emailed Caleb, but each time I hovered over the keys, I stopped myself. Public bitterness was a luxury for people with nothing to lose. I wasn't there yet. Instead, I watched. Quietly. I started lurking on a couple of industry forums, the anonymous ones, the places where CMOs and junior strategists posted under usernames like DeckDevil69 and Tagline Butcher. Places where real opinions lived under fake names. 3 days after her launch campaign went live, a thread popped up. Anyone else confused by Vector and Rise's new Her Story campaign? 50 comments, most polite, a few brutal. It's like if an inspirational quote account tried to design a Super Bowl ad, replaced nuance with glitter. I think they're just chasing the algorithm without a real strategy. One of the replies was from someone I recognized, an old colleague hiding behind a punny alias. I DM'd him. "Still there?" He replied in 2 minutes. "For now." That cracked the dam. Over the next week, I heard from 5 former coworkers, some I'd mentored, some I'd argued with, all of them uneasy. Riley had no process, they said. She canceled all internal brand review meetings because vibes don't need validation. She'd sent a deck to a Fortune 500 client with a TikTok dance embedded in the middle. She called it kinetic storytelling. They weren't allowed to question her. Caleb had made that clear. "We trust her instincts," he told them. "No roadmap, no accountability, just content and charisma." So I started documenting. Screenshots, notes, slips, missed client deliverables, video links with errors in the copy. I wasn't building a case exactly, not yet, but I wanted the pieces if the time came. I also made a few calls of my own. Lunch with Daniel, our old CTO, now semi-retired and running a data consultancy in Seattle. He didn't even wait for the drinks. "They replaced you with a brand ambassador, Alex. That's not leadership. That's a mascot." He was angry on my behalf. I wasn't anymore. Not like before. My anger had cooled, hardened. I took meetings with 2 former clients. Just friendly check-ins. No pitch, no angle, just coffee and conversation. They brought up the new direction before I could. "It's flashy," one of them said, trying to be diplomatic. "It's empty," said the other, less polite. "We don't need viral. We need results." I didn't gloat. I listened, took mental notes, left each lunch with a simple line. If things ever feel off, give me a call. I'm not disappearing. And I wasn't. I started rebuilding my routines. Gym at 7, emails by 9, a notebook open by noon. I outlined projects I'd shelved for years. Old models, fresh angles. Things I didn't have time for when I was caught in Vector's machinery. I didn't need to sabotage anyone. I didn't want to. Riley was doing that herself. All I had to do was stay patient. The public face of the company was still glitzy. The board still posted about engagement spikes and generational resonance. But inside, I knew the rot had started. Deadlines were slipping, talent was walking, clients were doubting, and she, Riley, was too green to see it coming. Every now and then I'd watch another of her videos. Not hate watching, more like studying a rival quarterback's plays. She had presence, sure, energy, but no depth. Every trend she leaned into made her look relevant and replaceable. Caleb hadn't just made a mistake. He'd bet the future on a sugar rush. I knew how that story ended, so I waited. Not like prey, like gravity, because sooner or later every algorithm runs out of tricks, and when that moment came, I wouldn't need to scream. I'd already be standing. It started with a dinner in a half-empty steakhouse on 46th. Carl Reynolds had been my first big client at Vector and Rise, back when we were just two guys with a laptop and a lot of coffee-fueled ambition. He was VP of marketing for a manufacturing firm that no one had heard of, but they had a rock-solid product and needed someone who could help them speak like humans. I gave them that voice. Over the years, it turned into a partnership. We weren't friends exactly, but we'd gone through too many trenches together not to understand each other. Now he sat across from me, loosening his tie, poking at his mashed potatoes. "Alex," he said without preamble, "what the hell happened over there?" I didn't pretend to misunderstand. They wanted evolution, something younger, shinier. He gave a dry chuckle. "Yeah, I've seen it. Those videos. Man, you know she sent us a PDF titled Brand is a Feeling? That's catchy." It was blank on page 3, literally, just a pastel gradient with the word vibe in lowercase Helvetica. I smiled into my drink. I didn't gloat. Not yet. Carl leaned in. "Look, officially, we're still under contract for the quarter, but I've got procurement breathing down my neck about the value we're getting. And between us, my team doesn't understand a damn thing Riley's proposing. Feels like she's designing for likes, not customers." He said it like a confession. I let the silence hang just long enough. "What if," I said slowly, "I built something leaner? No fluff, no decks bloated with slogans, just strategy, execution, access, me dot." Carl raised an eyebrow. "You going solo?" "Not quite. I'm pulling together a few people, quietly, people who miss building instead of broadcasting." He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. And that was enough. After that, I started making a list. Not everyone was a fit. Some clients had bought into the spectacle and wouldn't let go until it collapsed. But there were others. The legacy accounts. The quietly powerful ones who cared less about trend cycles and more about long-term impact. I reached out to 7. 4 responded within 48 hours. I didn't pitch. I listened. Every single one echoed the same refrain: confusion. A sense that the work coming from Vector now was surface level, rushed, glossy but hollow. One even said their new rebrand proposal looked like it was designed in Canva by someone on edibles. I offered discretion. I offered continuity. I offered 15 years of knowing their pain points without having to be brought up to speed. One by one, they moved. Not loudly, no press releases, just quiet notices to terminate, quietly routed to new emails with my name on the footer. Meanwhile, I kept listening. The leak inside Vector, still anonymous, started sending me updates like clockwork, screenshots of Slack messages, missed deliverables, frantic team-wide apologies. Riley had tanked a live pitch by quoting the wrong client data, then tried to pass it off as improvised emotional truth. Morale is shot, the leak wrote. People are scared to ask questions. She calls any critique negativity bias. It's like working in a cult with glitter. The board hadn't caught on yet, too busy watching engagement metrics climb and patting themselves on the back for being forward-thinking. But I knew the signs. I'd seen them before. Clients nodding politely in meetings while texting competitors under the table. Employees smiling on camera while updating their resumes after hours. Vector wasn't dying. Not yet. But the floorboards were creaking. I set up my own operation in a co-working loft across town. Just a desk, a screen, and a whiteboard. The CTO I'd met with weeks ago agreed to build out the back end for my new offering. Smart automation, real-time insights, no fluff. I called it Lantern. Not a company, a consultancy, no bloated staff, just a small crew with sharp minds and low ego. I didn't want to scale yet. I wanted precision. By week 3, we had 4 contracts in place. By week 4, 2 more were on deck. All of them clients Riley had tried to redefine. Funny thing about trying to reinvent the wheel, it only works if you remember it still needs to roll. I didn't post about it, didn't subtweet. I stayed off the radar. The people who needed to find me, found me. One night after locking up, I got a text from Carl. They sent us a pitch deck with QR codes to influencer testimonials. One of them was a guy in a hot tub talking about brand energy. We signed with you this morning. Just thought you'd want to know. I stared at the message for a while. Then I laughed. Not loud, just enough to feel it. It wasn't revenge. Not exactly. I wasn't interested in torching the place I'd built. But this was something else. It was reclamation, not of the company, of the standard. I wasn't chasing likes. I was rebuilding trust. And trust, once lost, doesn't go viral. It just quietly walks away. The first headline hit on a Monday morning. 3 major clients quietly exit Vector and Rise amid brand shift. No quotes from the company. No comment from the board. Just a concise piece from an industry blog that usually spent its time ranking Super Bowl ads. But this wasn't fluff. It was sourced. It had teeth. One unnamed executive said the agency had lost its strategic compass in pursuit of virality. I didn't write it. I didn't leak it. I didn't have to. By Tuesday, 2 more outlets picked it up. A podcast I used to guest on did a 5-minute segment titled When Style Outruns Substance. One of the hosts, an old colleague, said, Vector used to be a place you trusted with hard problems. Now it feels like a content farm with a PR budget. The pressure started to show fast. Wednesday, I got a DM from a designer still inside. No words, just a screenshot of a Slack thread. Riley had missed a compliance deadline for a European client. The legal team flagged it. She told them, and I quote, "Regulatory friction is just fear with a badge." I read that one twice. More screenshots followed. Staff venting in private threads. A junior strategist asking if anyone knew what vibe tier segmentation meant. One person joked about making a bingo card for every time Riley said emotional architecture. It wasn't rebellion, not yet, but it was smoke. And smoke doesn't stay hidden long. That Friday was the investor call. They streamed it live. Vector had gone public 2 years ago. Small IPO, modest valuation, enough that shareholders expected Polish. I watched from home, tea steeping on the counter, laptop open, volume low. Riley came on screen with a neon backdrop and a ring light halo. No blazer, just a lavender turtleneck and layers of necklaces that jingled every time she moved. She smiled wide, like this was just another video, not a quarterly review. She opened with her usual flood of phrases: disruptive resonance, community-driven evolution, brand as belonging. Then someone asked about the 3 lost contracts. She blinked, tried to pivot, said something about strategic churn being healthy for cultural agility. Then another investor pressed her on compliance liabilities in the EU, specifically the missed deadline. That's when it happened. She froze for half a second, just long enough for everyone to notice. Then she said, "Well, we believe legislation should adapt to creativity, not the other way around." Silence, audibly. Then the CFO, off-screen, cut in and redirected. His voice sounded tight, controlled. You could hear him breathing through his nose. A clip of the moment hit Twitter an hour later. The caption, "When your chief vibe officer meets the real world." 500,000 views by dinner. The next morning, the internal leaks turned into a flood. A former copywriter sent me a screen recording of their company intranet. Dozens of LinkedIn profile updates pinging the feed. People were jumping ship in real time. Another forwarded me a mass email Caleb sent that night, full of vague assurances. "We are evolving, not collapsing." He didn't even sign it with his usual "forward always," just "see." And then, finally, the text I knew would come. "Board calling an emergency. Tomorrow 9 a.m. Riley's in trouble. Caleb too." Same anonymous source, always punctual. I read the message twice, then closed my laptop. Didn't reply, didn't screenshot it. Instead, I poured the tea I'd forgotten about the day before. Rooibos, strong, still warm in the thermos. I sat by the window and watched the fog lift over the skyline. Somewhere in that mess of steel and glass, a boardroom was being prepped, chairs angled, tables wiped, bottles of still water uncapped. I didn't need to be in that room. Not anymore. They'd built a tower on sand and called it a castle, then handed the blueprints to someone who thought architecture was a mood board. Now, the cracks were spreading, and I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel joy either. What I felt was stillness, like an architect watching a bridge collapse, not with glee, but with certainty, because he knew the materials. He'd warned them about the strain. They hadn't listened, and now, here we were. I sipped my tea, steam curling toward the window. No headlines on my name, no press releases, just quiet, just truth, finally catching up. 6 weeks later, I stepped into a new office. Glass walls, quiet hum of conversation. No neon slogans, no ring lights taped to laptops. Just a clean space with potential in the air, and no one filming themselves say the word disrupt 5 times before lunch. The sign on the wall said Thorn plus Gray, legacy firm. Old money, old clients. But they'd spent the last few years trying to modernize without losing their soul. The partners had watched Vector's rise from a distance, and then its unraveling in real time. I didn't pitch them. I didn't have to. They reached out after the investor call debacle, said they'd admired how I handled my exit, said they had room for someone who knew how to build long-term fire without needing constant sparks. My new title? Chief Strategy Officer. Again, but this time with autonomy. I brought in the 6 clients I'd moved quietly over the past month. Not a power move, just continuity. They trusted me, not the brand I used to wear like a uniform. And here, they'd get more than what Vector had become. They'd get clarity, consistency, real thinking. My first day was low-key. No welcome balloons, no viral LinkedIn posts, just a firm handshake from the managing partner and a clean desk by a tall window. The view wasn't flashy, it was functional. Streets, people, patterns. The stuff that matters when you're actually paying attention. On the way to the building that morning, I passed a digital billboard running an ad for Vector's new app. They'd renamed it Pulse, which was ironic given how lifeless the interface looked. The screen was glitching, flickering between a frozen load animation and a distorted video of someone smiling through a filter. For a moment, it looked like the smile looped wrong, like it was trying too hard to hold its shape. I stopped for maybe 3 seconds. Then I walked on. That afternoon, I attended a strategy summit downtown. Nothing huge, just a mid-sized industry conference. Panels, coffee, the usual. I was walking out of a breakout session on ethical AI when I heard someone say my name. Alex Mercer? I turned. Caleb. He looked older, not in the way time ages you, but in the way pressure hollows you out. Same blazer, different eyes, less spark, more calculation, more fatigue. He stuck out his hand. I took it. Firm shake, no smile. Didn't expect to see you here, he said. I work again, I replied evenly. He nodded, glancing away for a moment, then back. I heard about the clients. Good saves. Wasn't hard. They called me. A flicker behind his eyes, something between shame and defense. We've had some turbulence, he admitted. You know how it is. New models, new risks. I do. I also know how to read a P&L statement. He forced a laugh. Right. There was a silence. Not awkward, just inevitable. I hope you're doing well, he finally said. I am. Another pause. Then, without another word, he moved on. I didn't watch him go. I didn't ask about Riley. Didn't need to. No one was saying her name anymore. Not in those halls. Not in the recaps. Not even in the gossip. Whatever fire she'd built had burned too hot, too fast, and when it collapsed, it left nothing but a faint smell of smoke. No legacy, no root. I stayed at the summit for another hour, exchanged a few cards, took a few notes. Then I headed back to the office. My office. There was a post-it waiting on my desk from a junior strategist. Glad you're here. Strategy feels like strategy again. I kept that one. That night, as I walked home, I took the long route. Not out of nostalgia, out of peace. The city buzzed, but it felt different now, like I was no longer trying to outrun it. I was walking with it, step for step. 15 years I gave to a company that no longer remembered how to speak with honesty. And in 6 weeks, I'd started something that might last longer than any algorithm. I didn't need applause. I didn't need revenge. I'd outlasted, and that was enough.